Governor Parkop accuses Australia of pre-empting government decision. China calls for an end to Cold War mentality. And businesses affected by fire remain closed.
This is the National EMTV News with Meriba Tulo.
A very good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is Wednesday's news. National Capital District Governor Parkop has accused Australia of preempting a PNG government decision by leaking its intention to place its troops in Papua New Guinea. Parkop said Australia has to understand that Papua New Guinea is a separate country and that its intentions were selfish and a little too late after more than 20 years of neglect. Governor Parkop also supported calls by the former PNGDF commander, Jerry Singarok, who called for greater consultation and debate in Parliament.
It's now become clear that negotiations for an Australian military presence have been ongoing for several months between Australia and key members of the PNG government. But there's been no firm statement yet from the PNG government of a policy decision. But recent media reports out of Australia indicate that Australia expects to have its soldiers on the ground in PNG very soon. NCD Governor Parkop has weighed in on the argument, expressing disappointment at the manner in which information was leaked to the Australian media. He has also accused Australia of trying to preempt an official government decision.
The way in which this information has come out, it's like preempting us again to make a decision, a policy decision that it's still under consideration. So it's like a deja vu again that the early days of the asylum plan is coming up again.
It's understood Australia wants to have its troops placed at the Lombrum Naval Base on Manus. Lombrum was established in the Second World War. The land area is bigger than either of the two army bases in Port Moresby. And Lombrum is also near an airfield that was used by the US to fly bombing raids into the Philippines during the war.
It's one of the biggest military bases in PNG. It's bigger than Mare Barracks, for example, bigger than Goldie, bigger than Taurama. So it's a major asset for the state. So we've got to decide how we utilize it for our interests.
More than 70 years after World War II, Lombrum remains a base of strategic military importance, not just to PNG and Australia, but also to the US and China. Papua New Guinea is now caught in a tussle between regional powers. For Papua New Guinea, the question is, what are the benefits of having an Australian military base? So far, China has proven to be the more favorable partner in terms of aid and military support, and this is despite the fact that Australia has long been a traditional trade and military partner. Governor Parkop feels that PNG is being used again by Australia and has little to gain through this arrangement in its present form. At the weekend, former PNG Defence Force Commander, retired Major General Jerry Singarok said Australia's intentions may be good, but he asked what the benefits are of having a military presence in Papua New Guinea. Singarok's concerns stem from a 20-year neglect of the region by Australia. After the Singarok-led Sandline operation in 1997 that ended the Bougainville War, Australia funded the downsizing of the PNG Defence Force because of a general fear of a military coup similar to that in Fiji.
The Australian government funded the downsizing exercise in 1999 by reducing the manpower from 4,200 to 2,000. They funded it, not Papua New Guinea government. The Australian government funded it. The same program funded the destructions of hundreds and hundreds of weapons system in the PNGDF. Reduced the PNGDF to bare bones.
The former commander says Australia has an obligation to help rebuild the PNG Defence Force. He's also called on the PNG government to step up to the challenge and increase defence spending so that the PNG Defence Force is able to meet the challenges of the 21st century.
The Papua New Guinea Defence Force is competing. It's not being resourced. It's not standing alone as national security, an entity of its own. It is grouped together in the law and justice sector, and that's why it's competing against other competing agencies. So you can see we have a real sorry state of where the PNG lives. So the PNG government, series of PNG government are to be blamed for where the status of the PNG is at the moment. But Australia must be equally responsible too.
Scott Whitey, National MTV News.
China's ambassador to Papua New Guinea says Western countries should cease the Cold War mentality and focus instead on helping Pacific Island states develop for the greater good of this region. Zhu Bing made these remarks when defending China's increased engagement in the Pacific. His comments come on the back of media reports calling for Western countries to curb the growing influence of China in the Pacific region. In recent months, China's increasing engagement with the Pacific, and more so with Papua New Guinea, has come under the spotlight. This has come to the fore over the last week, with Australian media revealing plans by the Australian government to set up a military base on Manus Island in a move to counter the growing influence of China in PNG. And this week, the US Navy Undersecretary was in the country to meet with high-level government and military officials on a range of issues, among them the growing influence of China in PNG. However, China's ambassador to Papua New Guinea, Zhu Bing, has defended the growing engagement by China in PNG and the wider Pacific.
Here I would like to make it clear that China has followed the principle of sincerity, real results, amity, and good faith, and the principle of pursuing the greater good and shared interests to develop friendly relations of cooperation with the Pacific Islands countries in broad areas. The purpose of doing so is to help the Pacific Island countries to achieve peace, stability, and prosperity, and is not targeted at any third party.
According to Ambassador Zhu, the engagement is purely bilateral. The ambassador went on to call for an end to what he termed the old concept of the Cold War mentality, and for all partners to work together for the practical benefit of the Pacific.
The Pacific Islands region is not the sphere of influence of any country. It has our hope that relevant countries and people will discard in real earnest the old concept of the Cold War mentality and the game of zero-sum. Objectively and positively view China's relations with the Pacific Islands countries and do more practical things to help the islands countries to achieve development, peace, and stability.
Diplomatic and economic cooperation between China and Papua New Guinea continues to grow, with trade relations surpassing the $2 billion mark in 2017 alone. This was highlighted at an event marking the 69th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Members of the Chinese community in Port Moresby gathered on Tuesday evening to commemorate the 69th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Also present were members of the diplomatic corps, as well as several government ministers and heads of state agencies. In his remarks, Chinese ambassador to PNG, Zhu Bing, highlighted the growing relationship between China and Papua New Guinea. In recent years, Papua New Guinea has become China's second largest trading partner and its largest investment destination in the Pacific region, with trade levels surpassing the $2 billion level in 2017.
Papua New Guinea has become the second largest trading partner and largest investment destination for China among all the Pacific Islands countries which have diplomatic relations with us. In 2017, the bilateral trade volume reached $2.84 billion, with the PNG side enjoy a surplus. And there are more than 40 Chinese companies operating in this country, creating more than 8,000 jobs for the local people and contributing positively to the economic growth and social progress of Papua New Guinea.
This relationship between both countries is being further strengthened with the impending state visit of China's President Xi Jinping in November, just prior to the APEC Leaders Summit.
In November this year, Chinese President Xi Jinping will come to Port Moresby to attend the 26th APEC Leaders Summit and also to make a state visit. It will be the first time for a Chinese head of state to come to this country. China and Papua New Guinea are keeping a close communication with each other to prepare for such an important visit of the President. We are confident that with the joint efforts of both sides, we will certainly make the visit a complete success and achieve fruitful results for our people.
2018 also marks 42 years of diplomatic relations between Papua New Guinea and China. According to Minister responsible for APEC, Justin Chachenko, this relationship is growing stronger as demonstrated by the increasing interaction between both governments. This relationship based on the One China policy.
Recognizing a long-standing on the One China policy has been the political foundation of our bilateral relations, which has remained stable and becomes even stronger with time with increased trade and bilateral cooperation. We deeply value our bilateral relationship with China as a key development partner contributing towards nation building and economic development of our country.
Chachenko added that this was more evident in recent years through Chinese support for Papua New Guinea in many areas of development, more so recently with support for critical infrastructure for the upcoming APEC Leaders Summit.
As a host of APEC this year, we are very grateful to the government of the People's Republic of China for their tremendous assistance in providing to our country in the terms of infrastructure development, logistics and facilities for our Leaders Meeting and CEO Summit.
A firepower demonstration will be staged by the Direct Fire Support Weapon Platoon from the 1st Royal Pacific Islands Regiment. The drill, set for tomorrow, is part of the Task Group Mero training leading to APEC security operations in November. It will be an opportunity for PNGDF soldiers to test their firepower capabilities using machine guns. This is the second time a firepower drill will be staged and is a follow-up exercise from numerous trainings conducted between the PNGDF and the Australian Defence Force. You're watching National EMTV News. Still to come, shops still closed after the big fire at Geruhu on Monday. City residents complain of blocked sewage system, and Paradise Foods announced their entrant under the Queen Emma chocolate brand for the upcoming Miss PNG Pacific Islands quest. Stay tuned for the details. Welcome back to the news. The 3 Bismillah shops that survived Monday's fire, including the service station at Geruhu Stage 2, have been closed for business for 3 days now. The fire destroyed the Bismillah wholesale before spreading to the Papindo supermarket and later to the Papindo department store. Bismillah's G-Mart is the only shopping center at Stage 2 that is currently open for business.
It has been 72 hours since the fire destroyed one of the oldest shopping centers in Geruhu, the Papindo supermarket and department stores. Though the fire initially started from Bismillah wholesale, it was Papindo that suffered double the cost. Both its shops went up in flames between 1 and 3 a.m. on Monday, 24th September, destroying store goods including 3 ATM machines, 2 owned by BSP and 1 by ANZ Bank. Most of the goods were destroyed by fire, while some were taken away by looters. Today, when EMTV News visited the site, employees from Papindo were on site to start the cleanup process. It has been over 20 years since a massive fire destroyed a shopping center at Geruhu. Since the fire on Monday morning, the other shopping centers owned and operated by Bismillah have remained closed for business. Thaklagunga, National EMTV News.
Imagine living near the smell of sewage and having no choice but to accept it, however horrid it is. The residents of Imina Street, Tohola 4, are living testimonies of having to live next to a blocked sewage main which overflows and is posing a health risk. They are searching for a permanent fix to the problem, but so far have had only short-term solutions done by Ederano. They are now calling on the local member as well as Ederano to help rid the problem.
The sewage flows over and splashes on the ground. The smell is just unbearable for the residents of Imina Street, Tohola 4. It has flowed this way for the past 3 years. I'm here at Imina Street, Tohola 4, where the sewage problem behind me has been here for the past 3 years. The residents here have been experiencing backflow of the sewage back into the toilets and the kitchens of the house. Some of the residents as well have been facing problems of diarrhea, breathing the smell of the sewage. 4 sewage mains along the Tohola 4 area are blocked. This one at Imina Street is one of them, and the remaining 3 are in similar state. The overflow all lead to an old drainage system which flows down to Tohola 2 before ending its journey just adjacent to the new Star Mountain Plaza.
Since long background blumi you look in this la sewage, and we start close to long house blumi in our family. Time this la sewage I been broke long 2015, between 15 and 16. Some time mi plus have exims la sick where some mi plus have diarrhea long em. Even I think so far or legally beginning every 1 or 2 months also have exims la sick. Our adults or young boys so far I think 2 or 3 will end up now sick.
The other main concern is the backflow of sewage back into the household sewage system, and that finds its way out to the toilets, shower drainage, and out the kitchen sink and spews over onto the floor. The residents of this property, belonging to Jan Koisen in section 399 lot 5, go through the area where the sewage usually spews out from, causing major health problems to the families living in the houses. The residents say almost 8 houses are affected, but the waste in the sewage belongs to more than 100 people. And when it flows down the length of the drainage, it is just a matter of time before there is some kind of health outbreak in the area, and for the guests and people that will be working in the Star Mountain Plaza and the new building where the drain flows between its properties.
Actually time sabe kam block sabe gonchar la house si gonchar lo sewage, bien sewage pipe bi gonta bi golong kitchen, sabe golo washwash place, bathroom, sabe golong even toilet to wash. Sa captured in the house na come outside.
Ederano has been coming and pumping out excess sewage waste, the waste that dries up and builds mounds on the main, but they cannot find a long-term fix to the problem. Continuous follow-up to Ederano for a long-term fix has been dragging on, and their lives are continuously at risk. They are calling on the member for Mospin Northwest, Semekere Murauta, and NCD Governor Parkop to intervene. But the residents have no choice but to become resilient to the stench and accustomed to the sewage that flows among their homes.
So far I think 3 or 4 times people are looking at Ederano lo come straight him, also come inside the 1 play year. I think also come 1 or 2 time lo straight him or fix him. Unfortunately, all try best to go on also have fix him. So suppose me happily go long member blo mipla long must be Northwest na Governor blo mipla Governor you blo kubla Governor where you sabe thingy miplo resident blo you.
Fidelis Sukina, National EMTV News.
The people of Papua New Guinea continue to use data that is outdated, and as the 2020 national census draws closer, the National Statistics Office is looking to collect data using a computer-assisted personal interviewing technique. The office has been lacking proper support over the years and will be looking to improve census data with this new technology.
Clear and accurate data in Papua New Guinea is scarce. We say that 97% of the land is customary owned. 87% of the population live in rural areas, and we are tossing between 7.5 or 8 million as the current population of the country. But where is the data coming from, and from which sources? The National Statistical Office had setbacks with data collection and its management of it. Coupled with funding issues, they have struggled with collecting data for public consumption. Their last project was the provincial data system, which couldn't be maintained because of funding constraints.
Using the 1980 census as the base to establish the provincial data system. Along the way, it was not well supported financially, so we dropped the issue. Then in 1980 and 1990, we also established the provincial data system. Also, we started entering names of all individuals in the country from the census. And similar to 1980, we don't have the funding support.
The way forward for planning for the 2020 national census is a new system of data collection.
This year we are planning for the national 2020 census. And it is also important to know that, and also now we're trying to collect data using the CAPI system or the computer-assisted personnel interviews.
The success of the system lies with the office ensuring that system is ready for the collection of data during the census. If it eventuates, this will help the civil and identity registry as well to source some of the data.
And if we establish this, it will be very easy for us now to, at the same time, capture data in the field.
Fidelis Sukina, National EMTV News.
As future accountants, you should be able to account for everything. That was the challenge given to the accounting students at the University of Papua New Guinea. The university held its accountancy day at its Waigani campus yesterday to talk about challenges and problems affecting the profession.
Speaking at the event, UPNG Vice Chancellor Vincent Malaibes said students have to allocate time for the purpose of why they are in the university. If you came in the right way, you have to earn your place here.
The difficulty UPNG is having and other universities is this. The grades which students have on their transcript does not correlate with the development of the mind. And we are aware that 50% of the marks that goes to our grade 12 results comes from continuous assessment. You have to ask, was that 50% earned in the right way?
Malaibes stressed on saying we are what we repeatedly do, and so we have to know our place in society. Malaibes encouraged the students to get into the habit of learning every day and trying not to compete with each other, but compete with the grading system. The keynote speaker of the event, James Gore, the partner of Ernst & Young, raised some important points during his PowerPoint presentation about is the future of finance, new technology, or new people.
So as technology advances, people are catching up on technology, and so there's going to be a demand for such people, such skilled people.
The Deputy Auditor General, Thomas Holland, who was also present, spoke about the lack of accountability in both public and private sectors.
I work as a consultant providing advice to governments throughout the region. And where I have been, I have seen them doing that to address the risk of fraud. In PNG, we don't. As the biggest country within, apart from New Zealand and Australia, we're not doing that. So we should. It's not too late.
Since Papua New Guinea is still a developing country, new gadgets and softwares will take time to be fully understood. Therefore, human skills are very important. Michelle Steven, National EMTV News.
Paradise Foods Limited is the proud sponsor of the 5th contestant in the running for the Miss Pacific Islands pageant PNG 2018. Paradise Foods, under its brand Queen Emma Chocolate, is in its 3rd year of supporting the pageant with a sponsorship of 20,000 kina. Representing Queen Emma Chocolate this year is Miss Duri Pauline Harry.
Miss Queen Emma Chocolate 2018, Duri Pauline Harry, says she purposely joined the pageant to promote education. Ms. Harry shares the same sentiments of the MPIP PNG to empower women through education. Hailing from East New Britain, the autonomous region of Bougainville and Central, the 25-year-old is an intern pharmacist with the Department of Health. Ms. Harry acknowledged companies like Paradise Foods for allowing young women like her to share what they were passionate about.
Education, I believe, is the key to empowering young women to becoming confident young leaders in our country and, of course, for the future of our country.
MPIP PNG is a not-for-profit organization that supports young women through the MPIP Scholarship Fund. So far, since 2011, it has assisted 204 young women nationwide with tuition fees. In 2015, Miss Abigail Habora made history for PNG to be the first Miss PNG to be crowned Miss Pacific Islands. Miss PNG 2017, Niawali Twine, while sharing her experience, said the pageant was not necessarily a beauty pageant as it is publicly viewed, but was a pageant with a purpose.
But I can by now say that it is not just a beauty pageant, it is a pageant with a purpose, a pageant that sees young women like me and many others and see the potential in them to becoming more than what they really are and give them that opportunity to speak for themselves.
Miss Queen Emma Chocolate's 2018 will be wearing the Baiwa label by designer Natasha Tamana Bai. She brings the number of contestants to 5. Sponsors of the other 4 contestants are Pogera Women in Business Association, Century Hotel and Rapopo Plantation Resort, Medeng Resort, and the International Training Institute. Charlene Airy, National EMTV News.
The Look in PNG Now Tourism Expo was held in Kokopo, East New Britain Province early this week. The Expo is an annual tourism-led event that brings together stakeholders from within PNG's tourism industry. The Tourism, Arts and Culture Minister, Emil Tamor, officiated at the launching. Minister Tamor says the Expo was timely for East New Britain Province as it is embarking on boosting tourism as a key industry in the province. This was the first time the Tourism Expo was held outside of Port Moresby, and it provided an avenue for exhibitors who may not have had a chance to attend overseas travel shows. This is Wednesday's news. We will take a look at stories making headlines overseas when we come back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to National EMTV News. Turning overseas now, for 7 years, airstrikes have been a deadly but yet routine part of life for Syrians. Now, a life-saving app is warning civilians ahead of time and giving them precious minutes to take cover.
Abdulrazak spends his time staring at the sky. He was a teacher, but that was in another lifetime. He's a spotter now, part of a trained team on the ground across Syria who report their observations on the types of aircraft they see and the direction they're headed. And he says, it's about saving lives, to feel that joy of knowing he helped others defy death. His and other spotters' observations, along with information on things like weather patterns and historical attack data, feed into an algorithm that is part of an early warning system called Sentry by Hala Systems. It reaches its users via Telegram and social media. Actually developing something. Hala is the brainchild of American John Yeager and his team.
This is not a new concept. So back in World War I and World War II and even after that, governments like the UK and the US employed the use of trained civilians to act as airplane spotters. We just applied about 7 decades worth of technological advancement and are essentially recreated that exact same system.
So how fast is it from the point where a spotter inputs information to a warning actually being generated?
Sure. So within a few seconds of us receiving an observation that is high enough degree of confidence that it would trigger a warning, a few seconds from input to an activation of an air raid siren in a potentially affected community.
In Syria, cell phone reception can be spotty, but Abdus Salman recommends Hala to his customers. The warnings tell you where a plane is headed, what areas it's flying over. So if there are close shelters, we can run to them, he explains. Even for those who have a shelter, it's often makeshift. Mohammed, a young father of a 2-month-old baby, dug out his own for his family and relatives. It's not much, but it's all they have. How effective do you think you've been able to be?
In the case where we're able to measure casualties in a location that's under heavy bombardment before and after our system is put into place and activated, we've seen up to a 27% reduction in lethality.
John, a former State Department employee, says Hala came about as a realization that bar somehow stopping the bombs and violence, there are few options to mitigate the impact of indiscriminate killing. And it's not just about saving lives in Syria.
I think that the world spends a tremendous amount of time focusing energy and resources on a lot of downstream issues that start with violence against civilians. Migration, displacement, socioeconomic issues. It all starts with innocent people being killed indiscriminately. If we can help mitigate the effects of that violence, we think it can have cascading effects, not just for Syria, but for every other country in the world.
In recent years, more than 60 women have come forward to accuse Bill Cosby of sexual assault, and after all of those accusations, all of those harrowing accounts, a court has finally sent him to prison. The 81-year-old is now officially classified as a sexually violent predator and will serve between 3 and 10 years for attacking a woman who once considered him to be a mentor.
For decades, the defendant has been able to hide his true self and hide his crimes, using his fame and fortune. Finally, Bill Cosby has been unmasked, and we have seen the real man as he is headed off to prison.
A Pennsylvania judge has ordered Bill Cosby to spend 3 to 10 years in state prison, denying the defense attorney's request for house arrest. They had argued Cosby is blind and only a danger to himself. The 81-year-old, known for decades as America's Dad, was convicted in April of drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constant in 2004. Before he was sentenced, the judge labeled Cosby as a sexually violent predator. The classification means he will have to register with state police and attend sex offender counseling for the rest of his life. His accusers say it's a punishment fit for the crime.
They feel that what was done to them was sexually violent, and that the person who did it to them is a sexually violent predator.
His lawyers say they plan to appeal the convictions.
Mr. Cosby's defense team is preparing a motion to address Mr. Steele's use of falsified evidence. Mr. Cosby clearly has been denied his right to a fair trial.
The U.S. president has been mocked at the United Nations, but Jacinda Ardern claims she didn't laugh as she treads a tricky diplomatic line. Donald Trump's boasts drawing sniggers as he pushed patriotism over globalism in his address to world leaders in New York. He also lashed out at Iran, promising more sanctions against the wishes of some of his key allies, among them Jacinda Ardern.
Jacinda Ardern arriving into the United Nations and taking her place among world leaders for the opening of this year's General Assembly. The main act, though, running late. President Trump arriving after he was scheduled to start speaking and getting an extraordinary reaction from world leaders who laughed when he began his speech by boasting.
In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
A highly unusual moment for an institution steeped in protocol and formality. His speech, though, otherwise fairly predictable. The president again promoting unilateralism, sovereignty, and his America First foreign policy.
America is governed by Americans. We reject the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism.
And touting success on North Korea, which last year here he threatened to totally destroy.
I would like to thank Chairman Kim for his courage and for the steps he has taken.
Trump instead blasting Iran for sowing chaos, death and destruction. He's promising further sanctions on Tehran, but finding little support among America's allies, including New Zealand. Iran's president responding it's up to the US to return to negotiations and accusing Trump of having the disposition position of a Nazi. Jacinda Ardern's brief meeting last night with the President going well by comparison.
To acknowledge the role that the United States has played around the Korean Peninsula, but also to flag that our officials continue to work on the issue of the steel and aluminium tariffs.
In the US, many see Ardern as a counterpoint to the President, a progressive beacon, and she was asked directly about their differences, sitting down with CNN's Christiane Amanpour in an interview.
What are the issues that you have with the current administration's policies?
Well, we can either respond by feeding some of that fear, exacerbating that fear, or actually saying we can do things differently.
And there was another celebrity appearance, Ardern meeting with UN Ambassador Anne Hathaway late today at the actress's request, her star continuing to shine brightly here in Manhattan.
You're with National EMTV News. We go for a break now. When we come back, some sporting updates in Trukai Sports. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. We begin with Rugby League. The oil search PNG Orchids have put together a 5-year plan of preparation towards the 2021 Rugby League World Cup. The Orchids made their maiden appearance at last year's World Cup and will be hoping to better their performance in the next tournament.
The inaugural Oil Search PNG Orchids team was named last year for their trial match against the Australian Jillaroos during the PM's 13. They celebrated their first anniversary on the 15th of August this year. Since the team was formed, they've gained much needed experience from the World Cup and their recent match against the Brisbane Broncos NRL women's team. Newly appointed coach David Wesley, who has always been an assistant coach or head coach in lower divisions, says though it is a tough task building a team, he believes the Orchids have a bright future with the plans they have in place before the next World Cup.
It's been a really difficult position for me coming into this the head coach role. I've always been an assistant to Michael or to lower grades, so really proud of the team for doing what we did. The scoreline didn't really show how we played. A lot of things to work on, and that's the thing about putting a young side together. It's only the start, and we have a bright future for the Oil Search PNG Orchids.
Wesley thanked PNG RFL and Oil Search for their support in entrusting him to take on the role as head coach and preparing a team for their upcoming match against the Jillaroos next weekend and the preparations towards the next World Cup.
If it wasn't for them, all of this wouldn't really happen and run professionally like it has been during the World Cup last year and against the Broncos as well. It was a really good event and it was a great learning experience for the players and also the coaching staff.
The PNG RFL was able to create an Orchids executive committee appointing Ruth Waram as the chair lady.
It's a long journey and we've just only started it and we're excited about it, and we thank Oil Search for their continued partnership, which has made it possible for the Orchids to progress this far in such a short time.
The Orchids will play their second match this year against the Australian Jillaroos next weekend as a curtain raiser match to the PM's 13 clash at the Oil Search National Football Stadium. Elijah Levet, National EMTV Sports.
There are plans of building a Chinese table tennis college in Papua New Guinea. A contingent from China met with the minister assisting the Prime Minister, William Sam, yesterday to discuss on setting up a table tennis college in Port Moresby.
The table tennis college will be funded by the Chinese government and will be built in the nation's capital. This college will see table tennis players in the country receive professional training to help enhance their skills.
From our initial meeting in March, you have well and truly advanced the concept of Table Tennis College Center in PNG.
Building a Chinese table tennis college will strengthen both countries through sports.
Will be another milestone, enhancing the good relationship between Papua New Guinea and China through sports. This will enormously facilitate our sports development in the world.
The establishment of the college will also increase participation of the sport in the country among young men and women.
Will also create alternative sport for young men and women in PNG who can also take table tennis as a career, as a sport, and also contribute to the well-being of the youth of PNG.
Elijah Levet, National EMTV Sports.
Don't go anywhere, we'll have more of Trukai Sports after these messages.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. To the NRL now. It's one of the greatest judiciary escapes ever by an NRL player. Billy Slater will make Sunday's grand final his swan song after convincing a three-man panel he did not shoulder charge Kiwi winger Sosaya Feki. The decision has divided the entire league community. So how did he pull it off? Here are the details of this extraordinary case.
Innocent or above the law?
I'd just like to thank the judiciary members for a fair hearing.
Many struggle to believe that, given the video evidence and the NRL's supposedly tough stance against the shoulder charge.
The rule is the rule, and we've changed the rule in grand final week so Billy can play.
If so, the Storm's extravagant rescue operation paid off. They rolled into NRL head office fresh off a private jet with coach and CEO. Slater was in the door an hour early before anyone else. Slater's lawyer showed still images that raised doubt he used his shoulder intentionally. The 35-year-old personally addressed the panel, saying he'd studied all of Sosaya Feki's tries prior to the match. And because the winger usually dives for the corner, an unexpected change of direction put him in a vulnerable position.
It was important for me tonight to get my point across and what my intentions were in this incident.
The independent judiciary panel was chaired by a Supreme Court judge who ironically once defended Slater's teammate Cameron Smith in grand final week. And it's now been revealed the NRL's first choice counsel was on holiday, forcing a replacement.
And I've got to say, fellas, the NRL counsel at the moment is a little bit more Dennis Denudo out of the castle, I beg your pardon, than mounting a really strong and authoritative case.
It's law, it's the vibe, and no, that's it, it's the vibe.
The clubs are going in a completely professional, switched on, got it done, outstanding job. The NRL fumble and bumble.
But the same NRL lawyer had no trouble getting the judiciary to put player safety first when Slater was taken out last year. So why hasn't that happened now the future Hall of Famer is on the other side?
Meanwhile, the Sydney City Roosters have a much more anxious wait on whether their star player will line up, with injured halfback Cooper Cronk named on an extended bench for Sunday's grand final.
With Cronk little more than a 50-50 chance of playing, the attention turns to the Roosters' other big signing, ex-Tigers fullback James Tedesco.
Are you prepared to step up? Are you ready to?
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't want to put that external pressure on myself, but if I'm playing how I have been and I've been really enjoying my footy and playing some good footy, then I'll be confident I could do that again this weekend.
Look, I'm a long shot. That's not lying. The honest thing is that I'm not going to go into the details of the injury because at the moment, with all due respect, you're on a need-to-know basis, and at the moment you don't need to know.
The Storm set to profit from a big injury 2 years running should Cronk not play. Last year, their grand finals opponents, the Cowboys, were without their star half as well, with co-captain Jonathan Thurston ruled out.
And that ends Trukai Sports for this evening. We go for a break now. When we come back, the weather details for Thursday.
Trukai Sports. Trukai Sports.
The weather details were proudly brought to you by Dulux, celebrating 50 years in PNG and the only paint made in PNG.
A look at the weather forecast for the next 24 hours. In the southern region, fine weather expected in Port Moresby, mostly fine for Daru and Kerama, some showers in Alotau and Popondetta. To the Momasa region, mostly fine in Lae, Madang and Wibak as well as in Vanimo, some rain and showers expected in Wau. To the New Guinea Islands region, fine weather expected in Larangau, cloudy for the next 24 hours for Kavieng, Kokopo, Rabaul and Kimbe. Some showers expected in Buka. And in the Highlands region, the major centers Mount Hagen, Goroka, Kundia, Wapmendi and Wabeg can expect fine weather over the next 24 hours. And there is a strong wind warning forecast for small ships. Strong southeasterly winds 25 to 34 knots with stronger gusts reaching 48 knots over Solomon Seas, and the Bougainville areas are expected to continue for the next 24 hours, causing rough seas. All small craft and boats are advised to take the necessary precaution before and after going out to sea.
The weather details were proudly brought to you by Dulux, celebrating 50 years in PNG and the only paint made in PNG.
And that's the news, sport and weather for today, Wednesday, the 26th of September 2018. On behalf of the entire EMTV News team, pleasant viewing. Good night.